Welcome to Mississippi, 1951, where the sun rises over fields that have seen more than their fair share of sorrow, where the wind whispers through the wooden slats of cabins long abandoned, and the dirt beneath your feet carries the weight of lives erased. Before we begin, take a breath, feel the weight of the moment. Leave a comment below where you are, what time it is, and let us know if you can hear the ghosts too. For this story, this tale of a forgotten hero, is not only being told, it is being remembered. A man sits in the shadows of a crumbling porch, his body marked by the brutality of those who wish to silence him. Bruises still tender, eyes hollow but unbowed. He is remembered by few, his courage documented in whispers, in the hurried notes of local reporters, in the fleeting testimonies of neighbors who dared not speak too loudly. Tonight his story emerges from the shadows, a tale that refuses to be forgotten, a tale that challenges the very memory of justice in America. Imagine the night, the humidity thick, the cicadas droning a mournful cadence, the stars hidden behind clouds of dust and smoke, and the oppressive quiet of a town that has learned to look away. Yet in that quiet, a heartbeat persists, a pulse of defiance, a breath of resilience. Every step he took across those fields was measured cautious, every glance over the shoulder a calculation. And yet he moved, always forward, always seeking, always surviving. The echoes of chains, the remnants of whip marks on wooden beams, the distant cries that haunted the edges of his youth, all converge in this moment, in this man, who bore witness to the cruelty of a system that sought to erase him. And still, he sat, the embodiment of survival, the unbroken silhouette against the dawn. This is more than history, more than a photograph faded into sepia tones. This is a story of endurance, of a life that defied annihilation. Listen closely, for the ground itself remembers, the wind remembers, the ghosts of the past linger in every creaking floorboard, every rustling leaf. They remember him, even if the world does not. It is the early months of 1951, Mississippi, the deep South, a land both fertile and haunted, where the cotton fields stretch endlessly pale under the sun, the soil dark rich and yet heavy with history. A faint haze hangs in the morning air, the smell of earth sweat and burning wood drifting from distant farmsteads. Small plumes of smoke curl from chimneys of aging cabins, each structure worn by time, neglect, and a history that no one speaks of aloud. The town itself is a scattering of wooden buildings, some painted in colors long faded by relentless sun. Others simply bare timber, gnarled and warped. The roads are dirt-rutted and dusty. The occasional hoofbeat or wagon wheel crunching against the dry ground punctuates the stillness. There is a rhythm here, a cadence of life that has endured cycles of hope and despair. Yet beneath it all, a quiet tension hums. The remnants of fear passed down through generations, the unspoken rules, the invisible boundaries. At the edge of town, a cabin sits alone, framed by ancient oaks, their limbs twisted like the stories whispered in the night. Moss drapes from their branches, swaying gently in the morning breeze. Inside the cabin, shadows cling to corners. The floorboards creak underfoot. Each scratch and dent tells a story. Each beam of light falling through a crack in the wall highlights a past layered with pain and resilience. The air smells faintly of smoke and wood, of meals cooked over open flames, of sweat, and of sorrow long endured. It is here that our activist, once a boy, running through these same fields, hiding from those who sought to control him, has grown into a man shaped by struggle, hardened by injustice, yet unbroken. His hands bear the marks of labor, calloused and worn. His gaze, when it meets the horizon, is steady, unflinching, as if measuring both the distance traveled and the distance yet to go. Around him, the land stretches, open fields dotted with remnants of plantations, the tall grass brushing against his legs as he moves, carrying the weight of memories that do not belong to him alone. The town itself breathes history. In the wooden posts lining the streets, in the small church at the center of town, where hymns once carried hope to the weary, and where now the pews sit empty, yet the echoes linger. In the local schoolhouse, chalk dust motes hang in the sunlight. The smell of ink and wood, polished by countless hands, fills the room. There is a sense of presence here. The ghosts of generations, children and elders alike, who dreamed, who labored, who prayed, and who at times vanished without a trace. The river that cuts through the farmland glimmers faintly in the morning light, its waters reflecting both the sky above and the shadows along its banks. The banks themselves hold secrets, stories of escape, of hiding, of whispered plans carried in the dark. Every bend, every curve seems to murmur. The past is not quiet here. It speaks, softly, hauntingly, reminding those who listen that survival is never merely a choice. It is a test, a negotiation with forces that cannot always be named. Listen to the sounds of the town waking. A rooster crows in the distance, the faint creak of a gate swinging open, the rhythmic chopping of wood, and beneath it all, the subtle, almost imperceptible hum of memory, a vibration that resonates through the very ground. This is Mississippi, yet not merely the land of the present. It is layered, stacked upon itself, with centuries of hope-deferred promises broken, yet resilience cultivated in the cracks. It is among these fields and buildings, these rivers and oaks, that whispers of the past mingle with the present. The activist's journey is intertwined with them, his footsteps tracing a path that echoes those who came before. Enslaved men and women whose names were never recorded, whose fates were often unknown. The air is thick with these histories, as palpable as the morning fog, as tangible as the grain in the wooden cabin walls. Even the sky seems to hold its breath here, a soft gray light filtering through the clouds, the occasional ray of sun piercing the haze, casting shadows that stretch long across the ground. And yet, no matter how long or dark, shadows cannot erase the traces left behind. The footprints in the soil, the indentations in the doorframe, the faded inscriptions carved into beams, all bearing witness, all waiting for someone to remember. As we look closer, the streets and fields reveal the layers of human activity. A wagon wheel left to rot beside the general store, a swing hanging from an oak swaying in the breeze. Each object tells a story, of lives constrained yet striving, of children playing quietly beneath watchful eyes, of elders moving slowly, weighed down by memories. These scenes are ordinary, yet extraordinary, for in them the ordinary bears the weight of history, and the extraordinary is hidden in plain sight. The scent of the fields mixes with the faint tang of river water. The air is heavy but alive, alive with the pulse of a community surviving under oppression, surviving through music, through prayer, through small acts of resistance. There is a rhythm here, a heartbeat, and within it the activist moves, aware, alert, carrying not just his own history, but that of all who came before him. Nightfall will bring a different soundscape. Crickets, frogs, the soft rush of wind through trees. Yet even in daylight, the weight of history is present. The land remembers what the eyes might overlook. The cabins, the churches, the fields, all repositories of stories, some spoken, many unspoken. And within that tapestry, our activist walks, navigating both seen and unseen threats, both the physical dangers of the era and the psychological scars left by decades of violence and neglect. This is the stage, the setting, the Mississippi of 1951, a place where past and present collide, where each building, each field, each river bend tells a story of endurance, of courage, of sorrow, of defiance. And it is here, among these familiar yet haunted landscapes, that the story will unfold. A story that is both intimate and epic, personal yet universal. A story that demands we pay attention, that demands we listen, that reminds us that history is never simply behind us. It moves with us, shapes us, and waits. The records speak in hushed tones. A faded page from a local newspaper. 1951, Mississippi. Man survives attack, fate unknown. The ink-smudged edges curled. The words themselves carry the weight of fear, the caution of those who wrote them. Each syllable a reminder that to speak too loudly was dangerous, that to document the truth was to court peril. Yet here it is, preserved, fragile, waiting for eyes that dare to read. In the county archives, a ledger lists names in neat, cramped handwriting, names of men and women who disappeared without explanation, sometimes after a night of terror, sometimes after the smallest act of defiance. The Freedmen's Bureau records whisper of children sent away, families fractured, promises broken, and the eerie notation repeated over and over, fate unknown. Each repetition a beat in the rhythm of history, each mark a pulse that refuses to fade. And yet, alongside these official documents, the folk stories persist, whispered from porch to porch, in hushed tones where the firelight flickers. An old woman in a cotton gown tells of a man who walked into the fields and never returned. She swears she saw his shadow beneath the moonlight, moving against the wind, as though the earth itself had released him from the grip of men who would harm him. Her voice trembles, but the story remains, a thread weaving fear and hope. In another corner of the county, a young boy recounts a tale passed down from his grandfather, of spirits marching silently through the woods, of a regiment of black soldiers who appeared in dreams, phantom soldiers, said to have fought battles that no history books record. They carried drums that beat in the night, signals that only those abducted could hear, each echo of the drum a warning, or perhaps a guide. The boy shivers as he speaks, yet cannot stop, for the story demands to be told. Historical fact and folklore intertwine here. The newspapers, the ledgers, the official reports, they document a brutal reality, yet they cannot capture the full spectrum of experience, of fear, of resilience, of defiance. The folklore fills the spaces left empty by official records. It gives voice to the silenced. It preserves memory where ink fails. The activist's own life threads through both worlds. There are accounts of his early days in the fields, overseers' reports noting a boy quick to flee or quick to observe, minor infractions noted in the margins, the pen harsh cold. Yet beneath these observations one can detect a spark, a will, a determination that would not be subdued. These factual entries, stark unembellished, carry the weight of reality, and yet, when spoken aloud, they take on another life, another resonance. In the whispers of the community, he was known as the man who would not be broken, who walked past those who sought to harm him, yet returned each night, unseen perhaps, to check on his neighbors, to ensure the children were safe. There are stories of him appearing in doorways at midnight, offering comfort or a warning. The lines between memory, legend, and reality blur, as they often do in places where survival itself was an act of courage. Even the landscapes themselves, seem to hold memory. The riverbanks where runaway slaves once hid. The dense woods where the wind carries voices of the past. The abandoned cabins where shadows linger. All become part of the narrative. Each rustling leaf, each creak of timber, each shifting shadow contributes to the story. The land remembers. And through folklore, the people remember. A particularly chilling account comes from a plantation long since abandoned. Locals tell of a night when the moon hid behind clouds, and a figure appeared in the fields, walking silently, yet the crops bent as though acknowledging his presence. Witnesses say they felt both fear and protection, that the spirit of a man who endured brutality still lingered, watching, guarding, reminding. The line between fact and legend dissolves here, for history itself seems haunted. Documents corroborate fragments. A police blotter notes an assault survivor walking into town at dawn, bruised, exhausted, yet alive, refusing aid, refusing to leave. The ledger confirms his presence. The newspapers remark on his miraculous survival, and yet they omit the small, crucial details, the moments where courage and cunning guided him. These gaps, where the official record is silent, are where folklore breathes life, where the collective memory of the community fills in what cannot be recorded on paper. The activist's story is thus layered. The inked pages tell one tale, factual, measured. Yet the oral histories, the whispered accounts, the ghostly recollections, tell another. They describe courage that defies description, resilience that cannot be quantified, a presence that lingers long after the body has passed through the fields and cabins. And so the narrative of Mississippi 1951 emerges, not from a single source, but from the interplay of documents and memory, of newspapers and whispers, of ledger entries and firelit tales. Each fragment, each story, each fact and each legend contributes to the mosaic. The result is a story that cannot be fully captured, that must be experienced, that asks the listener to step between the lines, to feel the pulse of history, to hear the echoes of lives lived under both oppression and defiance. It is in this intersection, between the recorded and the remembered, that our activist comes alive. Each bruise, each whispered warning, each shadow in the fields speaks not only of the brutality endured, but of the courage to continue, to survive, to resist. The facts provide the structure, the folklore provides the soul. Together, they create a cinematic landscape of lived experience and lingering memory. As you listen, picture the cabin at the edge of town, the sunlight slicing through the gaps in the boards, illuminating dust motes that dance in the air. Hear the wind stirring the tall grass, sense the river moving silently nearby. Feel the tension of a life under constant scrutiny, the courage required to move, to act, to exist, and the whispers that follow, the stories that persist, long after the events themselves have faded from official record. This is Fact Layer Y and Folklore Layer 1, intertwined, inseparable, a tapestry of history and memory, of cruelty and resilience, of silence and storytelling. And in this weave, the activist's story takes form, a story that refuses to be forgotten, that demands to be felt, that lives even when the world looks away. As the days unfold in 1951, Mississippi, the calm surface of town belies the undercurrents of tension running through every street, every field, every cabin. Small incidents ripple outward, unnoticed by some, yet devastating to those who remember. Each occurrence, seemingly minor, carries the weight of history, the echo of oppression, the scent of fear lingering in the humid air. A local farmer reports an unusual disappearance. A young boy known for wandering the woods at dusk simply never returns. Search parties comb the fields, calling names into the thick air, but the forest swallows them whole. The shadows stretch long across the ground, as if the trees themselves conspire to hide what the townspeople dread. The boy's absence is noted in the ledger, fate unknown scrawled beside his name. A chilling refrain, repeated with hollow precision. On the outskirts of town, an abandoned plantation becomes the center of whispered rumors. At night, lantern light flickers in the windows, though no one resides there. Some claim to have heard the clatter of footsteps across the wooden floors, the soft murmur of voices speaking in languages long forgotten. Others insist they saw figures moving silently through the fields, tall silhouettes against the moonlight, and the crops bending as though acknowledging their presence. The stories circulate quietly, but with growing intensity, each tale feeding the next, spiraling outward, creating a lattice of fear and fascination. Meanwhile, in the small church at the center of town, windows shuttered against the summer heat, the congregation has begun reporting strange occurrences. Hymn books found open on pews, pages turning on their own, the faint scent of incense lingering though no service has been held. One elder recalls seeing a shadow move across the pulpit, not cast by any person present, and the sound of a drum, soft, rhythmic, echoing through the empty aisles, as if calling the faithful to a gathering unseen. Reports also emerge from the riverbanks. A fisherman claims that the waters themselves seem restless. Nets that had lain undisturbed overnight are found tangled. Logs shift without wind, and the occasional glint of something metallic catches the eye, though nothing is there upon closer inspection. Some say the river carries the memory of those who fled the plantations, of those who sought freedom, and of the man who walks among them, moving silently, unseen, yet present. In the woods beyond the town, a pattern emerges. Small groups of animals vanish. A flock of birds disappears into the night. Horses in neighboring fields grow restless, shying at shadows that seem to stretch and twist unnaturally. Residents speak in hushed tones of the man in the mist, a figure who appears and disappears, always just beyond the edge of vision. He is said to appear to those who linger too long in the woods, guiding some, warning others. His presence a mix of reassurance and terror. Even within the activist's own life, incidents escalate. Messages left on doors, subtle marks carved into wooden beams. Warnings, perhaps, or guidance. At times he finds evidence of intrusions, a window ajar, footprints in the soft dirt. Yet nothing is taken. Nothing is missing. Only the sense that someone or something is watching, tracking, protecting, perhaps testing. Each occurrence sharpens his senses. Each unexplained moment adds weight to the days that already press heavily upon him. The town itself seems to respond to these events. Shops close earlier. Children are called home before sunset. Whispers flow like currents beneath the surface of conversations. Adults glance over shoulders, hesitant, fearful, aware that even in the light of day, the past does not rest. And neither, it seems, does the man who survives brutality. Each report, each incident, builds upon the previous, weaving a network of suspense that tightens around the community. Nightfall brings another layer. The crickets drone, frogs croak. The wind moves through the fields, carrying the scent of damp earth. And yet, there is a rhythm to the fear, a cadence almost musical in its repetition. The activist walks the periphery, aware of every sound, every shadow, his own heartbeat a metronome against the uncertain night. Stories of fate unknown flash across his mind, names recorded in ledgers, faces seen in fleeting glimpses, all converging into the reality of his present. In one particularly chilling incident, a local family reports that their barn door opens on its own, the horses inside restless stamping, hay scattered. No human intruder is ever found. Yet the family swears they saw a figure, tall, silent, moving with deliberate purpose. Some say he held his hand over the horses' eyes, calming them. Others claim the figure disappeared into the shadows before anyone could approach. These mini-cases repeat, multiply, each one a thread in a tapestry of suspense, of survival, of the thin veil between legend and fact. Throughout all of these events, the land itself seems complicit. The fields, the woods, the river, the cabins, they hold memory. Each rustling leaf, each creaking floorboard, each gust of wind seems laden with whispers. The townspeople may not fully understand what they witness, may not fully comprehend what they feel. But the incidents continue, layering fear, awe, and respect, building toward a moment yet to come. And amidst it all, the activist navigates the currents of both history and myth, aware that each disappearance, each unexplained occurrence, each whisper of fate unknown is part of a larger narrative, a continuum that stretches back through generations. The incidents are not random, they are markers, points of tension that illuminate the dangers he faces, the resilience he embodies, and the legacy he carries forward. As daylight breaks over the horizon, the incidents do not vanish. They linger, etched into the land, whispered in the trees, reflected in the faces of those who dare to look. And in each shadow, each unexplained movement, the story of a man who survived brutality grows, intertwining history with legend, the factual with the folkloric, building a mosaic of tension, suspense, and awe. This is the rising tide of events, the crescendo of many cases, each one sharpening the focus, drawing the listener deeper into a Mississippi that is alive, haunted, vivid, a place where the boundaries between the seen and unseen, the known and the unknown, collapse, and where the activist's presence resonates, unbroken, unyielding, a pulse against the encroaching darkness. The official reports arrive slowly, some filed in county offices, others tucked away in state archives. Each page carries a weight, a gravity that presses upon the present as heavily as it did upon the past. Maps of exoduster migration are meticulously drawn, arrows stretching from Tennessee, Louisiana, Arkansas, pointing northward, names scrawled beside them. Men, women, children, seeking lives they were promised, lives they had earned through blood labor and endurance. Yet even as the maps record movement, they cannot capture fear, cannot measure hope, cannot account for the whispers in the night. Military documents tell another tale. A local unit of black soldiers stationed nearby reported odd occurrences during exercises. Nighttime patrols interrupted by sounds of drumming, boots stepping in cadence without origin, calls for attention left unanswered. Yet those awake swear they felt an unseen presence guiding their movements. Some journals describe these moments as ghostly, haunting, a shadow of men long gone marching again in the quiet hours. Phantom regiments? The words appear, repeatedly, in diaries and annotations, a spectral echo of history that refuses to be forgotten. The activist himself intersects these records. He recalls seeing figures on the edge of town, fleeting shadows that move with purpose, hands raised in silent warning, whispers that brush against the nape of the neck. The newspapers record only Bruce's survival acts of defiance. They omit the silent guidance, the warning glances, the moments when the past reaches forward to protect the present. And yet, in the folklore of the community, these occurrences are not forgotten. They are woven into stories told at night, by elders to children, in hushed tones. Under the faint glow of oil lamps, the church registers reveal another layer. Baptisms, marriages, funerals. Each entry carries the imprint of community resilience. The inked names shimmer faintly in the candlelight. Stories beneath stories. In whispered accounts, the activist is said to have attended services where the preacher's voice echoes strangely, words stretching into memory, passing into legend. Accounts describe sermons where spirits of ancestors seem present. A flicker at the edge of vision, a chill on the skin, as if the congregants are not alone. Dream narratives add another dimension. The activist awakens in the early hours, heart pounding. Visions of the plantation fields from which he descends. Figures appear. Men and women in worn clothing, faces obscured, hands reaching, a warning, a blessing, or perhaps both. In these dreams, he sees the long march northward, the river crossings, the rail lines, all paths of hope, yet shadowed by unseen threats. The dreams bleed into daylight, influencing decisions, guiding steps, shaping the rhythm of survival. Newspaper clippings from Harlem, 1920s resurface, articles detailing migration labor disputes, encounters with law enforcement. The activist studies them carefully, notes the patterns, notices how communities attempt to document resilience in the face of constant adversity. He sees in these records the reflection of his own journey, the courage required to navigate a world that often sought to erase him. The facts are precise, the stories cold, yet they pulse with the invisible currents of lived experience. Folklore continues to thread through the community. Midnight vigils at riverbanks, tales of shadowy figures carrying lanterns, guiding the lost. They speak of a presence that watches over children walking home alone, of spirits who chase away the predatory, of ancestors reminding the living that resistance is sacred. The activist knows these stories, listens to them, understands that survival is not only a physical act, it is spiritual, it is communal, it is memory made manifest. One particularly vivid account tells of a night when a storm tore across the fields, lightning illuminating cabins and river bends. Some residents swear they saw the activist moving through the rain, unbroken, his shadow cast impossibly long, as if he were both man and spirit, guiding neighbors to safety. The newspapers record only wind damage, scattered debris, nothing more. Yet the folklore preserves the truth of that night, the courage, the watchfulness, the resilience in the face of elemental fury. In the activist's personal recollections, moments overlap. Fact and folklore blur. He recounts traveling along a dirt road, hearing drums echoing across the fields, approaching the sound cautiously, only to find nothing but the swaying grass and distant trees. Yet the memory of the drum remains, a phantom rhythm marking time, reminding him of lives lost, lives saved, lives yet to be written into history. The drum becomes a motif, a thread linking the tangible and intangible, the historical and the spectral. Every diary entry, every official report, every whispered account. They converge in a network of memory, a tapestry of endurance. The activist's life is stitched into it, his survival a living testament to the layers of experience documented. Fact, communal memory, spiritual resonance. The community around him reveres this history quietly, in subtle gestures, in retelling, in observing the unspoken. Each act of remembrance a shield, each story a lamp in the darkness. The riverbanks, the cabins, the abandoned fields, the small churches, all repositories of layered histories, some tangible, some spectral. The activist moves through them with awareness, with purpose, each step both historical and symbolic. A continuation of struggles past, a negotiation with forces both human and unseen. He knows the records cannot tell all, that the folklore ensures some measure of justice, a balance between fact and memory, between brutality endured and courage witnessed. Thus unfolds Fact Layer 2 and Folklore Layer 2. The official records anchor the story, provide structure, chronology, and evidence. The folklore breathes life into it, filling silences, preserving voices that otherwise would vanish. Together, they form a narrative that is dense, cinematic, and haunting, a landscape of resilience, of survival, of memory refusing erasure, and within it, the activist stands, alive, enduring, a living bridge between history and legend. As you listen, feel the weight of the reports, the pulse of the drums in dreams, the shadows along the river, the whispered names in church registers. Each detail, fact or legend, contributes to a whole, a continuum, a narrative that stretches across time, reminding us that the past is never gone, that survival is a story told through both ink and breath, through paper and memory, through shadow and light. Night falls over Mississippi, the heat of the day lingering, pressing down on rooftops, fields, and the river alike. Shadows stretch long across the land, each one hiding secrets, each one hinting at histories yet untold. The activist moves quietly, guided by instinct memory, and whispers carried on the humid air. Every step is deliberate, measured, a negotiation between seen danger and unseen presence. Across town, lights flicker in abandoned cabins, windows rattle with the wind. Yet some swear the movement is not caused by air alone. A figure glides past, tall, silent, imperceptible in daylight, but pronounced in the imagination of those awake, listening, waiting, aware that history itself can manifest as shadow, as presence, as warning. Each creak of a floorboard, each rustle of grass, heightens the tension, drawing the listener deeper into the unfolding drama. In the churchyard near the heart of the community, tombstones lean, names worn by time and weather, some barely legible, others inscribed, clearly reminders of ancestors whose lives were measured in hardship, whose stories were rarely told. The activist stands among them, reading the names in silence, feeling the pulse of generations beneath his feet. The wind carries voices, soft, urgent, pleading, rejoicing, warning, as though the dead themselves participate in the unfolding events. Elsewhere in the fields, where cotton grows and the soil remembers every step, the activist pauses, sensing the rhythm of the unseen. A drumbeat, faint, insistent, calling attention, guiding movement. The Phantom Regiment, soldiers long gone yet never forgotten, marches in spectral precision. Each beat reverberates through earth and mind, echoing past injustices, echoing courage, echoing defiance. And in that rhythm, the activist finds his own heartbeat, synchronized, aligned with the pulse of survival itself. A sudden noise breaks the pattern. A window shatters. Boards creak under weight unseen. The air thickens. Tension becomes tangible. Breath catches. The senses heighten. The activist moves. Shadows twist around him. Not hostile, not friendly. Simply present. Marking boundaries. Enforcing rules. Testing resolve. Every decision carries consequence. Every pause, a potential threat or salvation. He approaches the river, silent now, waters reflecting a pale moon, the current whispering secrets, the logs shifting, the reeds swaying. Something moves beneath the surface, an indistinct shape, then gone, leaving ripples. The river is alive with memory, carrying stories of those who crossed in hope, those who were lost, and those who survived. It is here that the line between history and legend blurs. The activist senses it, feels it, walks it. Back in town, the records and artifacts converge. Ledgers, newspaper clippings, letters, all pointing to events that defy full understanding. Each detail contributes to a crescendo, the mosaic of fact and folklore building, until it is nearly overwhelming. And yet in the midst of it, clarity emerges, a pattern, a signal, guiding the activist, reminding him that the path of survival is not linear, that courage is not singular, that history is not silent. The night deepens, and with it the high point of tension. The activist is confronted by manifestations of past cruelty, menacing presences, imagined or real. He recalls the ledger's fate, unknown entries, the newspaper stories, the whispered accounts, and yet he steps forward, unbowed, guided by instinct memory and the spectral counsel of those who came before. Every movement deliberate, every breath measured, every shadow acknowledged, but never allowed to halt his advance. A lantern flickers in the distance, carried by no visible hand. Yet its light illuminates the path, revealing remnants of history, chains, tools, boards scorched by fire, all symbols of the brutality endured. And in this illumination, he sees not only suffering, but strength, resilience. The land itself seems to acknowledge his presence, guiding, yielding, permitting passage. The phantom drum grows louder, echoing across fields, rivers, and cabins, a cadence of defiance, of remembrance, of survival. The activist's heartbeat matches it, a resonance that bridges past and present. Fact and folklore converge. Every whispered story, every documented event, every legend and anecdote crystallizes into a singular, visceral awareness that the night itself is alive with memory, and that he is a living conduit of it. Suddenly, the tension peaks, a culmination of all prior incidents. The shadows coalesce, voices rise. The wind carries a mixture of lament and encouragement. The activist pauses at the intersection of field and forest, aware of eyes both human and spectral, aware of histories pressing upon him, aware of futures yet to be written. A breath, a step, a decision, and the climax of endurance is reached. In that moment, the land, the stories, the records, the phantoms, all bear witness. The activist stands, bruised, exhausted, vigilant, yet unbroken, a figure both historical and legendary. The drumbeat fades, the shadows retreat, the wind softens, and for a moment, only the quiet remains, punctuated by the echo of survival. This is the bridge, the climax, where all layers, fact and folklore, history and memory, human courage and spectral presence intersect. The audience can feel the weight, the pulse, the magnitude of endurance. The activist embodies every story, every survival, every act of defiance chronicled, and every story yet untold. He is the axis around which this narrative revolves, the living testament to a past that refuses erasure. The first light of morning creeps across Mississippi, soft pale, hesitant, brushing the fields with a tentative glow. The air is heavy with silence, yet it is a silence that carries weight, the weight of what is past, the weight of what persists. The cabins stand as sentinels, scarred wood and peeling paint, yet unbowed, bearing witness to lives that endured, and to those who disappeared into history's shadows. The activist moves slowly, each step measured, aware that the land remembers. Every footprint in the dirt, every indentation in the cabin floors, every bend in the river's edge is a record, a marker, a testimony. He pauses at the old churchyard. Tombstones leaning names eroded, but the spirits of those who lived, labored, and resisted linger, in wind, in whisper, in the shifting of shadows. They echo across time, reminding the living that survival is not a solitary act, that memory itself is sacred. News clippings, ledgers, letters, all converge once more, showing the broader arc of struggle, the persistence of courage. Even as official records fade, as pages yellow and crumble, the stories endure, preserved in the communal memory of townsfolk, whispered from porch to porch, passed to children under lamplight. The activist listens, absorbs, understands that his survival is part of a continuum, that his courage both honors and extends the legacy of those who came before. In the fields, the wind carries a song, faint at first, a spiritual rising from the soil, from the sweat-soaked labor of ancestors. Voices in harmony lifted across generations. The activist pauses, listening, feeling the rhythm beneath his feet. The land itself seems to pulse in response, alive with remembrance. With each breath, each step, he becomes more than a man, more than a survivor. He becomes a vessel for history, a bridge between what was and what remains. Stories of shadows persist. Ghostly figures glimpsed at twilight, drums beating in dreams, whispers in the reeds. These tales once dismissed now gain clarity. Each spectral note, each movement in the periphery carries meaning. Each echoes the resilience, the warnings, the guidance passed down. The activist senses their presence, respectful, watchful, almost protective. And in acknowledging them, he honors the intertwined layers of fact and folklore. The river, calm under the morning light, reflects not only the sky but memory itself. Currents ripple with echoes of escape, of clandestine crossings, of lives carried northward. Each wave seems to murmur names long forgotten. Yet the activist knows them, feels them. They remind him that the struggle is ongoing, that survival is not final, that remembrance itself is a form of resistance. In town, children play cautiously, aware of the land's stories. Elders watch quietly, their eyes reflecting knowledge of things that cannot fully be explained. The activist passes by, nods, smiles faintly, a gesture that carries weight, recognition, the unspoken passing of history from one generation to the next. These moments are small, seemingly ordinary, yet monumental. For in them the lessons of survival, courage, and defiance continue. Even as the day progresses, the shadows of night linger, in memory, in the soil, in the wooden beams of cabins. The activist reflects on the cumulative weight of events, the incidents of the past, the phantom drums, the whispers, the ledger entries, all converge into understanding. He knows that history is alive, not static, and that each act of endurance, each story told, each life preserved, contributes to the living memory of a people. The sun climbs higher, illuminating the fields, the river, the cabins. Yet the presence of the past is palpable. A ghostly breeze moves through the tall grass, carrying the scent of sweat earth fire. Reminders of labors endured. The activist inhales, feels the history in his lungs, the weight of survival in his chest. The echoes of those who came before accompany him, always teaching, warning, inspiring. At the edge of town, the old plantation remains. Scorched boards, rusted tools, yet quiet dignity persists. Stories of resilience and ghostly guidance intermingle. The activist walks among them, each step a testament. Each shadow he passes acknowledges him. recognizing the continuity of courage, of survival, of memory. The past is not dead. It informs the present, shapes the future, and lives through those who carry it forward. Even in the small, unnoticed moments, a glance exchanged, a story whispered to a child, a hymn hummed quietly, the legacy persists. Spirituals rise, ghost stories circulate. The activist knows that remembrance is a collective act, that by surviving, by witnessing, by telling, he preserves not only his story, but the stories of countless others. And those stories ripple outward, beyond cabins, beyond fields, into hearts and minds yet to hear. As dusk approaches again, the sky tinged with amber, the river reflective, the cabins casting long shadows, the activist pauses, considers the journey, the weight of history, the persistence of legend. He exhales, slowly, consciously, aware that each breath carries memory. Each heartbeat is a drum, echoing through the past and present, through fact and folklore, through life and spirit. And as you, the listener, take in this narrative, hear the rhythm of survival, the echo of justice denied, the whispers of courage. Consider the enduring weight of these stories. The activist's tale is not only his own, it is that of a community, of a people, of a history often ignored, of legacies carried quietly through time. The story ends, yet does not conclude. The land remembers, the river remembers, the cabins remember. The ghosts linger, the echoes persist, and in that persistence, in that memory, the activist survives still, through the stories we tell, through the attention we give, through the act of listening. You have just heard a chapter of history, a memory not meant to fade. Let it resonate. Leave a comment. Share where you are, what you felt, which echoes spoke to you, which shadows moved closest. For this story, this tale of a forgotten hero, is not only told, it is remembered and continues.